It's a little after 5 o'clock Eastern time. It's week 6 of the 2022 NFL season, and the FTN Network has got you covered. Welcome to the FTN Bets NFL Betting Show. I'm your host, Tom Hannifan. I'm joined by Taylor Mathis, of course, who, like every American, got burned last night by Thursday Night Football as both a fan and as a bettor. Thursday Night Football is where dreams go to die. Also sitting in for Chris Meaney is FTN Daily and FTN Bets lead analyst, Kyle Murray. We'll have some fun with that name throughout the show, I'm sure. I want to show you guys the slate of games that are coming up this weekend in the National Football League. For those of you watching us live, we encourage you to get involved in the chat and let us know what you'd like us to weigh in on. This show is for you. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications on YouTube. Comment and like us as well. Still to come in this edition of the FTN Bets NFL Betting Show, it's 3 and Out best bets. At the conclusion of the show, we'll get the bronze, silver, and gold picks from Taylor and Kyle. We recommend you keep an eye on our official bet tracker, FTN Alerts, and of course, FTNBets.com, because you can try a free 3-day trial of FTN Daily at FTNDaily.com right now. Be sure to check that out. And remember, you can become an FTN Bets premium member today and save 10% when you sign up with the code FTNWINS. You get access to our top analysts, tools, picks, and more. Visit FTNBets.com for more information. Guys, let's chat very briefly about what went down last night on Thursday Night Football. Kyle, I want to start with you because I know Taylor and I were talking before we came on here, and it was rough. Very curious what you think about Washington's 12-7 win at Chicago.
Yeah, it's been brutal. The NFL, we get our hopes up for the new week, right? And then the Thursday game rolls around, and it just it kind of leaves us a sore taste in our mouth. But no, again, it was not a fun one, but there was money to be made last night. I didn't make any, but that means there's plenty to make here on the Sunday games.
It's fair. Taylor, you and I talked about this. You made the very intelligent decision to go to the gym at some point when this game was going on. And this was a struggle. Going into it, the Commanders were getting anywhere from -1 to -1.5, according to FTNBets.com. What is your recommendation for football fans, especially looking at some of these rough Thursday night football matchups, considering the teams that we're getting?
Yeah, I ended up going to the gym at halftime. I was like, I can watch this game while I work out because
I don't blame you.
I'm not really missing much at all. I think something to look at, especially with these Thursday night football games, take the under, it seems like, on every single thing that you can get. When it comes to the totals, when it comes to props, I went with over on Carson Wentz completions as well as J.D. McKissic over on his receiving total. Neither of those even came close. So I need to start learning from that, take the under on some of these props, especially these low-scoring games.
I feel bad for everybody involved with Amazon's production of Thursday Night Football because the show is good. The talent are great. It's fresh. It feels exciting. It's just back-to-back weeks. You have that Broncos-Colts game, which was just an exercise in futility. And then what Washington and Chicago did last night, to a degree, you're not surprised. But still, it's like, ugh. This was rough. But luckily, this Sunday and hopefully Monday, we've got some really good matchups. One that is sure to have a lot more talent involved in it that I want to start off with is Bills at Chiefs. Bills are getting -2.5 on the road, according to FTNBets.com. You can check that out right now. Taylor, this seems like something where Vegas is just daring people to go in for Kansas City in this sort of game. But considering the way the Bills have looked, the number one offense in the NFL, who do you see coming out on top in this one between the Chiefs and Bills?
Oh, Chiefs and Bills. I am very excited for this matchup. We have head-to-head, the two front runners to win the Super Bowl, and head-to-head, the two guys that are in first and second place right now to win the MVP and quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes of the Chiefs, and then, of course, Josh Allen of the Bills. So this is going to be a fun one regardless. And I feel like these teams are very evenly matched on both offense and defense. I think one thing that we're seeing slightly differently than we did last season with the Chiefs is they're a little bit more run heavy. They're changing up the pace of game a little bit, averaging about 114 yards on the ground per game right now. Nothing to write home about, but it is something to note. They don't have Tyreek Hill like they did last season. They can't use his speed for those explosive offensive plays. So I think that in this game, Patrick Mahomes is going to have to use his legs a little bit more here. My favorite prop that I'm going to go with in Chiefs Bills is going to be Mahomes over 12.5 rushing yards. Actually, excuse me, I think it's 21.5 rushing yards on that. Really love that. I feel like in order to get some first down yardage against a tough Bills defense, he's going to have to run the ball a little bit. So I think that over should easily hit.
The interesting thing, Taylor, is that Kansas City is 18th in rushing, and then on the flip side, Buffalo is second in rush defense. So, Kyle, when you look at this game, do you expect the Chiefs' ground game, the tailbacks especially, to have a lot of production?
I typically don't hear for honestly for both these teams. I think that they just live and die by their passing attacks, and rightfully so with two elite quarterbacks. And you see that down in the red zone, down by the goal line as well. And that kind of leads to my favorite prop in this game. It's actually going to be Josh Allen over 2.5 passing touchdowns. Believe it or not, that's actually at plus 130, while Patrick Mahomes, same line over 2.5 at plus 135. So we've seen Josh Allen continuously find the end zone with his arm. And, maybe that line is a little bit predetermined on the juice because of his ability to run in on the ground as well. But 3 games so far this season with 3 or more touchdowns. So at plus money, really like that number. But not banking on too much running production from these backfields here. Again, I think it's going to be a shootout type environment. Both teams play very fast and both teams like to throw the ball. So I do think we see more through the air in this game.
Yeah, just about any individual statistic regarding Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, you could probably take the over in this one. It's the number 1 passing offense in Buffalo against the number 24 ranked pass defense in Kansas City. So that could be trouble. One player that I find very interesting, Taylor, and I want to get your take on this, is Bills running back Devin Singletary. Could he have some success as a receiver, a la what Raiders running back Josh Jacobs experienced last week at Arrowhead?
Well, I hope he does because he's on one of my fantasy teams. So I hope that he has a great week. You could definitely see that. I think last week we saw a little bit of the holes that the Chiefs defense is dealing with. Maybe they clean that up this week going in against the Bills. The Bills 3-point favorites heading into Kansas City as well. If I had to pick a side, I would probably lay the 3 points with the Bills in this one. I could see Singletary having a great game.
Yeah, we'll see. And Josh Jacobs certainly had his opportunities, and that was a big rivalry game, Raiders and Chiefs. And I think we understand the Raiders are not the Buffalo Bills, which I think even more makes this a little bit curious if you're a Chiefs fan, that it's like, oh, you barely escaped with a victory against Las Vegas, and now you've got to deal with a team that, as you were saying, Taylor, many expect to make it to the Super Bowl. Kyle, in regards to the Buffalo Bills, they get back, especially on offense, tight end Dawson Knox. On defense, they get Christian Benford in the secondary and linebacker Tremaine Edmonds. Do you see those 3 making a big difference in anything that you might be looking at in terms of betting this weekend?
Probably not too much of a difference here. They're also getting Isaiah McKenzie back after the concussion last week. I do like some of McKenzie's over on his props. I like his over on receiving yards. And like you mentioned, it's kind of hard to really get any good feelings about unders in this game just because of the way these two teams play and obviously the high over-under in the game total. But I don't mind taking a stab on a Dawson Knox anytime touchdown. He does feel like one of the players who are in the NFL who are most due for a touchdown, the guy who scored pretty consistently last year. And, we were seeing Josh Allen find his receivers in the end zone quite a bit. I think that potentially Dawson Knox finds the end zone here, but not something I'm looking at as too much of an impact here from a betting perspective.
I love that on Dawson Knox just because Gabe Davis has had a lot of success. Obviously, Stephon Diggs is going to get his targets. He's going to get his numbers all together, so that shouldn't shock anyone. But you could see Dawson Knox potentially eat into the production that Gabe Davis has been getting in his absence. So Bills and Chiefs, that's a huge one in the AFC. I'm very much looking forward to that one. Let's flip to the NFC. It's Cardinals at Seahawks, a pair of 2 and 3 teams. Both are coming off of losses. Arizona is getting anywhere from -2 to -2.5 on FTNBets.com on the road, very similar to what the Bills are experiencing at Arrowhead. The Cardinals are going to deal with the same sort of situation in Seattle. Taylor, I recently watched last weekend the Eagles beat the Cardinals, and it was close. This is an Arizona Cardinals team that I think a lot of people believe could be explosive offensively coming into this season. Some questions on defense. What I saw in that game was Arizona utilizing spacing and speed, very similar to what an NBA team almost can do, is if they can spread you out and then use their smaller receivers like Marquise Brown and a bevy of other players, they can really do some damage. Do you expect that to dissect the Seahawks defense? Because frankly, Seattle's the worst defense in the NFL statistically.
I don't. I'm actually a little shocked by this game. The fact that Arizona is 2.5-point road favorites heading into Seattle. I live out here in the Valley, and people are very disappointed with how the Cardinals have showed up so far this season. I said earlier this year, too, when it was Panthers, Cardinals, whichever head coach lost that game was going to be the first one to get fired midseason. Matt Rule is now out. I wouldn't be shocked if Cliff Kingsbury is next. And I actually don't love the Cardinals in this spot. 2.5-point road favorites just doesn't make sense to me. I really don't understand it. Arizona's really mediocre. I'm taking Seattle as my outright dog on the money line this week, plus 115 over at Superbook. Arizona is bottom of the barrel in rushing and passing. The Cards only scoring an average of 21 points a game. Seattle's quarterback, Geno Smith, is cooking. Even though their record is 2-3, Smith has a 25% completion rating, top 10 in passing TDs with 9, only 2 interceptions. That's top 5 in the league. The list of his stats pretty much just goes on and on. Seattle is also 2-2 in games decided by 7 points or less. That means 4 out of the 5 games that they've played have been extremely close. And this game only has a spread of 2.5. So it sounds like a contest that's right up the Seahawks alley. So I like the Seahawks on the money line at home.
That's very interesting. I love what Geno Smith has been doing. It's his career resurgence that's been spectacular, and the Seahawks, as a result, are 7th in scoring now behind the journeyman quarterback. Kyle, when you look at this, what are some safe bets for Seattle's offense outside of Geno Smith in regards to how this offense operates?
Well, I mean, a safe bet in terms of what we're going to see from the offense. I'm not so sure I love any particular props from Seattle's offense, but I do think a safe bet in terms of what we're going to bet on utilization-wise, rookie Kenneth Walker should be heavily involved in the offense with Rashad Penny out for the year with that broken tibia, I believe it was. Definitely in the leg, but definitely out for the season, which is obviously poor news for him, but good news for Kenneth Walker. He's going to be kind of stepping into that RB1 role. His prop comes in at 61.5. That's a big number for a guy making his first start. I wouldn't recommend the under here because I do think he's heavily involved, but I think this is going to be a spot where we do see Seattle forced to throw a little bit more often than not. They have been the most efficient offense in all of football, and I do wonder if that can continue. Obviously, we're now 5 weeks into the season. They looked really good. There's no doubts there, but the efficiency has been off the charts, and I do think that once we see the efficiency drop, that could hurt pretty much the entire offense from a prop perspective. And I think we're seeing some elevated numbers here for the Seattle offense. So far, as of now, I'm staying away from any Seattle offensive props, but I do like the Arizona offense quite a bit from a prop perspective. In terms of defenses, you're probably not going to find one any worse than Seattle on the Sunday slate with the Lions on bye. But in terms of what we've seen from them, nobody in the NFL is allowing more yards per play or yards per pass attempt than the Seattle Seahawks. They're 31st in DVOA and they're 31st against the pass. So I like overs on both Rondale Moore and Marquise Hollywood Brown on their receiving lines here. Both guys that I like quite a bit. I want to say Hollywood Brown came in at 70.5 last night when I took him on the over in the bet tracker. He's now at 71.5, still totally fine with that number. Rondale Moore, 43.5. I still like that over there. But another prop that I like for Rondale Moore is his over on his rushing yards. Over 3.5. I put this in the bet tracker yesterday at 2.5. So again, I highly recommend getting in on the bet tracker there. But if he gets pretty much one carry, I like his odds to get there. He saw 2 last week. You always have to worry about him going backwards, trying to create plays like we saw last week, but they like to have him involved in space, get the ball in his hands. So I like Rondale Moore over 3.5 rushing yards.
Kyle, I'm so glad you brought up the rushing game for Arizona, because the question going into this is who's going to get the lion's share of the carries. So it might be safer to be betting maybe the overall total rushing yards for the Cardinals than individual players, simply because James Conner and Darrell Williams are banged up. And I encourage those of you that are watching this live, wait until Sunday and make a decision if it's regards to your fantasy team or placing a bet and see where those guys are at. But Kyle, I am asking you this question very intentionally. Kyler Murray, do you see him getting the over on what is 26.5 rushing yards according to FTNBets.com?
Definitely don't mind that number. Let me check where the models have him currently. Like you mentioned, 26.5 is the line. I have him right around 28. So, sorry, 32, actually. I was looking at a backup running back for Arizona, 32 rushing yards for Kyler. So I would lean the over there. We've seen some consistent involvement, not necessarily the mega upside games for Kyler on the ground so far this season, but consistent involvement throughout the first 5 weeks. So, yeah, I would prefer the over on the Kyler rushing yards as well.
Murray to Murray. Thank you for being a good sport. I appreciate it. I'm very excited to see that. And then like the stat that's out there about, like when it's a Call of Duty a double points weekend or something like that, or a new game comes out and all of a sudden Kyler Murray has a bad game or something like that. I hope that trend doesn't continue for Kyler. Let's move on to Sunday Night Football. And this is where Taylor and I are going to strangle each other if we were in the same room. It's Cowboys at Eagles on Sunday Night Football. Of course, Taylor's a big Cowboys fan. I'm an Eagles fan. The Eagles are getting anywhere from -6 to -6.5, according to FTNBets.com. I expect a lot of pressure from this Cowboys defensive front. I genuinely expect tough sledding through the air for Jalen Hurts. Taylor, you and I talked about this game coming in here, and I think both of us feel cautiously optimistic, but I think we're both almost kind of leaning, and this kills me as an Eagles fan. The way that Dallas is trending, this could go the Cowboys' way. How do you feel?
Oh, we're definitely trending up. I am so excited for this game, Cowboys, Eagles. Dallas 4-1, Philly the only undefeated team in the NFL. I refuse to pick a side on this because I feel like I'm too tempted to be biased, like I was saying. So I will not bet the Cowboys on the money line, but I do like what I'm seeing out of them right now. I'm going to try not to be biased and go with a player prop, Eagles running back Miles Sanders over 65.5 rushing. The Cowboys pass rush is absolutely lethal, ranking second with 20 sacks. And many, like myself, believe that Micah Parsons is already the best pass rusher in the game. The only way to stop an elite pass rush is with ground game, and having a quarterback like Jalen Hurts helps. He creates plays out of the pocket. He likes to run the ball. He makes it difficult for defenses to play man-to-man. Philly's other key weapon will be Sanders this week and that run game. Sanders, fourth in rush yards in the NFL, 414 yards through the first 5 weeks. Sanders hit this over in 3 out of 5 games, and he's averaging over 17 rushing attempts per game. The Eagles are going to need Sanders to pretty much be at his best. I like him over on his rushing total. I think that's the only way the Eagles get it done against a stellar Dallas defense.
I reluctantly agree with you. I don't like it, but I agree with you. Kyle, looking at
over at least. Hey, I'm having.
I know. This is a tough one because I completely agree with you. If the Eagles can consistently run the ball and then stop the run, Zeke and Pollard combined for 164 yards to beat the Rams last week, and Cooper Rush only had 102 yards passing. So I mean, there's a very basic formula for this, a very old school football way of doing things that the Cowboys are executing right now, and they're getting the job done to the tune of 4 straight wins.
Yeah, run the ball, and Cooper Rush is doing what he does best right now, not creating turnovers.
Not a lot, yeah.
That helps. He doesn't really have to do a lot when he has a defense that's helping him out so much. And basically, they're asking him, Cooper Rush, please don't turn over the ball. Don't throw any interceptions. Thankfully, those 2 last week got called back because of penalties on the Rams. But he's been doing what he needs to do. I feel like this is the first time he's really going to have to step up. He's probably going to have to throw a bit more, make some more plays in order for Dallas to come out ahead. But I think that the points being, on the side of the Eagles is a little bit generous right now, like we talked about before the show.
Yeah, I like what the Eagles are doing, and I referenced it moments ago. That Cardinals win, little too close for comfort. And listen, every team is going to take a loss unless you're the 72 Dolphins, or the Patriots until the Super Bowl in whatever year that was. But still, it's inevitable. It's inevitable. Kyle, looking at this game, I'm glad that Taylor brought up the running backs for Dallas. I want to talk about the running backs for Philadelphia, because while I do expect to see a steady dose of the rushing attack, getting Jalen Hurts involved in that department, I could see him struggling a little bit against this Cowboys pass defense. In regards to the tailbacks for Philadelphia, there is a tendency for Philadelphia to bust out the screen game really effectively, and to the point that Taylor was just making about Micah Parsons and so many other pass rushers that the Cowboys have. You look at the different tailbacks that Philadelphia is able to trot out there, whether it's Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, or Kenneth Gainwell. Do you like any particular props for any of those three, maybe in regards to receiving yardage totals?
None that I am overly enthused with. I am a little curious to see how they kind of work Boston Scott back into the offense after being out last couple of weeks. So that'll be interesting to monitor there. I would prefer Sanders, if anyone, on his over on receptions. Last I checked, it was 1.5. We haven't seen a ton of consistent involvement, but again, 2 catches from a running back, considering they're playing a defense that is very good at getting to the quarterback, might lead to some quicker passes, and him being used as more of a safety valve check down type play as that kind of being his role in this game. I think that could be an elevated spot for Sanders. So if I had to lean one, it would be the over on his receptions at 1.5. But I actually prefer another pass catcher in this game as my bronze pick, so I'll save that for later. But I also really like Jalen Hurts over on his rushing yards. 49.5 is where it comes in at. I think they're going to have trouble at times protecting him, and he's going to have to use his legs more often than not. I think the place where this could go a little bit sideways is if they use Micah Parsons as just a spy on Jalen Hurts. I think that could lead to some troublesome things for Jalen Hurts, but we'll see how that shakes out there. But I like Hurts over on his rushing yards, 49.5. I think that's just simply too low. Like, for example, we saw last night with Justin Fields, 44.5 was his rushing total. I felt a little wheezy about that one, but my model was telling me to bet the over. He ended up rushing for over 80 yards. So I'm just going to trust the model here and take the over on Jalen Hurts.
It's about the only way Justin Fields can really move the ball right now with that Chicago Bears offense. I feel bad for him. All right, Kyle. So since Taylor and I are very biased in this game, who do you see coming out on top? And make sure you choose wisely.
Yeah, I feel like I have a gun pointed at me on both sides here. So I am going to go with the Eagles. I apologize. I apologize, Taylor, but I said it early on, and the Eagles, I think, are currently, they'd be my pick to end up in the Super Bowl, representing the NFC. Their defense is incredible. Their offense looks like an entirely new offense, just with the addition of A.J. Brown, adding that alpha superstar wide receiver opens up so many different things. We've seen it for so many different teams, and now it's happening for the Eagles here. And obviously Jalen Hurts kind of taking his game to the next level, but it's that defense. That defense is scary. I have a special place in my heart for Cooper Rush. We both went to the same college, so have to respect what he's doing here, but I am going to go with the Eagles.
Kyle, I knew I was going to like you. I knew you were going to be all right.
I feel like we need to make our own little side bet. If the Cowboys win, you have to wear a Cowboys jersey on one of the shows. And
okay, this is like the third jersey bet that I have, and I have to stop making them. I have one for Penn State versus Michigan on Saturday. I went to Penn State. Kyle, we were doing so well.
I went to Iowa. Oh boy.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. My buddy Biggie is an Iowa grad, so I'm okay with Iowa for now. But the last thing I want to say about this Cowboys-Eagles game is, win or lose, Taylor, will this be the end of the discussion? Should it be Cooper Rush or should it be Dak Prescott?
I think it might be. I feel like if the Cowboys lose, people are going to be very skeptical if Cooper Rush was only playing well because they weren't playing as good of teams through the last 4 weeks. If he wins, oh boy, I think they have to really start considering things in Dallas. I've already been saying I think that they should be looking at that a little bit. And I'm a little bit mad at myself that I'm even saying that, because I am such a big Dak lover. I love Dak Prescott. As a person, too, he just seems like a great guy off the field as well. So I'm always rooting for him. And I loved when he came in as a backup for Tony Romo. I was rooting for him to get the start. So I'm like, now am I doing the same thing for him to not get the start and Cooper Rush to get the start? I don't know. I want the Cowboys to win. So whatever is going to work favorably for them, that's what I prefer. Seems like both these guys, I like them both a lot. I feel like Dak, though, because of the money, Jerry Jones is very loyal to his guys. Dak is going to get the start, I feel like, regardless. But, Cooper Rush, hey, if he comes out on top in Philly, maybe I'll be wrong.
Jerry Jones has had some very interesting things to say about this regarding his quarterbacks that has really stoked the fire altogether. I genuinely think, regardless of outcome, this will not necessarily be a breathtaking game for Cooper Rush, to the point that it'll bring anybody that is maybe drinking the Kool-Aid that is Cooper Rush, it'll bring them back down to earth. And we expect Dak Prescott to be back very soon for the Cowboys. So we'll see what goes down on Sunday Night Football, and Taylor and I will duke it out on Monday after the fact. Speaking of Monday Night Football, unfortunately, has the Denver Broncos playing in it. The Denver Broncos will be visiting the LA Chargers. The Chargers are getting -4.5 at home. The over-under on this is anywhere from 45.5 to 46, according to FTNBets.com. I'm saying take the under, very similar to the way that we've been talking about some of these Thursday night football matchups lately. Kyle, how painful could this game be?
It could be very painful, potentially for just one side of this game, but I think that this game could be pretty interesting, which I know is probably a contrarian take at this point, but I'm not quite ready to give up on the Broncos yet. I'm not quite ready to give up on Russell Wilson yet. I know we've seen some bad from him, but at times we've seen some good as well, and I think that we've seen him get little to no help on the outside. We saw a few very crucial drops last week. The offensive line has not been great either, and potentially be worse with Garrett Bowles going down there. But yeah, I'm just going to be optimistic because I'm a big Russell Wilson fan, and I like to see these primetime games have some excitement, but I'm going to maintain some optimism here. I like this game quite a bit. I like a couple of the props as well. Cortland Sutton over on his receiving yards, I like quite a bit. Again, banking on some potential rejuvenation here for the Broncos. So I'll take the over on Cortland Sutton's receiving yards.
Okay, that's interesting. Taylor, looking at the offense for the Chargers, obviously Justin Herbert is leading the way, seems to be kind of slowly but surely recovering from the rib injuries that he sustained a couple of weeks ago. Austin Eckler has gotten his chances to get back into the lineup and really produce. Who do you like offensively for the Chargers?
Oh, I definitely would just take the Chargers over the Broncos. I know, Kyle, you're saying that you're not over Russell Wilson yet in the Broncos. I'm over them, and I don't want to watch them in primetime anymore. And I love Russell Wilson, huge Russell Wilson fan. Have his jersey. He's been one of my favorite quarterbacks in the league for a long time, but he's just not getting it done. I don't think that the Broncos' new ownership group had this in mind when they were bringing Wilson over to Denver. Definitely going to look at the Chargers, QB Justin Herbert dealing with an injury still, but he plays very well in primetime games. He's thrown for over 300 yards 4 times, 20 TDs. The Chargers, I think, will handle this horrible Broncos team very easily. I'm not super excited for this game. I'm just over watching the Broncos in primetime.
I agree. It's just rough, and I can't really put my finger on what it is. And then 2 back-to-back really difficult Thursday night football games. So it just seemed like, maybe we were going to be rid of dealing with some of these teams in primetime, and then just right back around on Monday Night Football. There are the Broncos, and the Broncos have a couple more primetime games, which I understand the TV networks and how it works in terms of ratings, and you put one big star up against another big star, and you can say Wilson versus Herbert, and that's exciting. And then once the game actually happens, that can be rather difficult. The one thing I look at for this Chargers defense, Kyle, is that it's just been so inconsistent. It's been so up and down. And you look at a lot of the talent that they have and some of the injuries that they've dealt with. They should be able to slow down this Broncos offense pretty handily if they come out there and they just play assignment football. What do you think?
I mean, I would assume so on paper as well, but you also have to keep in mind, in my opinion, that this Chargers team so far are the unluckiest team in terms of injury. They're just banged up top to bottom, offense, defense, really tough to find, a healthy body pretty much anywhere, right? So I think that's also going to play a factor. But I think a thing I like to talk about a lot with prop betting is that you can often find times where the market just drives these props way down. And that's the case for Russell Wilson here. 228.5, I believe, is where his passing total is. Even when you're considering him having a poor game, which a lot of my model takes in these first 5 games pretty heavily, still accounting for all that, still for over 250 passing yards. So that's still a pretty significant edge on the line there. So I think that's still a spot to find some value as well. But I would keep in mind the injuries and what we're seeing from the Chargers, the team that they're actually rolling out there. It's played a big factor in the performance that they've had so far this season.
Chargers will have home field advantage on Monday Night Football, an in-division game. That should be exciting. Those are the games that we're particularly paying attention to. Now it is time for 3 and Out. It's time for our best bets, the bronze, silver, and gold picks from both Kyle and Taylor. Taylor, we're going to start with you ladies first in regards to the Buccaneers at Steelers. Who is your bronze pick?
Yeah, my bronze pick coming from Bucs Steelers. Pittsburgh. Oh, yikes. They're coming off a loss to Buffalo, 38-3. Josh Allen, 4 TDs. The Steelers got run all over last week, and I think it's going to be the same song and dance this week. The GOAT, Tom Brady, owns the city of Pittsburgh, 12-3 straight up, 112 passer rating. And the Steelers' D just isn't the same without TJ Watt, who will now be missing even more time after having to get his knee scoped on top of his pec injury. So I'm going to go with Brady over 277.5 passing. He's going to have a day. Over the last 2 weeks, he's averaging 368 yards through the air, completion rating around 67%. Even with the Bucs only averaging 20 points a game, Brady is still top 3 in pass yards in the league. Brady goes off this Sunday over 277.5 passing yards.
I really like that because I expect an angry Brady. It's been, well documented, some of the off the field issues he's having, but especially he got fined $11,000 for kicking Grady Jarrett in the midst of one of those very, very controversial sacks, roughing the passer penalties that came about this past weekend. So I really expect a ticked off Tom Brady against the Steelers, and that's not good for Pittsburgh. So I like that. Kyle, your bronze pick we were actually talking about earlier in regards to Eagles Cowboys.
Yeah, real quick, I actually love that Tom Brady call. I bet that same number last week, and he beat it in the third quarter. Exactly. $11,193 fine for Brady, which how does the NFL come up with that number? I have no idea. I think they just throw it into a random number generator, and that's what these guys have to pay.
How the IRS does your taxes.
Add the $3 onto the end.
Yeah, I think they're just disrespecting. At that point, just round up, right?
Right. Yeah.
Very strange number there. But yeah, my bronze pick is going to come in that Sunday night game. And again, it's going to be an Eagle. I got Devontae Smith over 4.5 catches on the day. In terms of what we've seen from him so far this season, it's been at times inconsistent involvement. But when you look at his last 4 games, in 3 of those 4, he's had 7+ catches in 3 of those last 4. And in the game where he didn't go over 5 catches, it was a game with some weather issues, some rain, some wind in that game against Jacksonville. He's been heavily involved in the offense. The targets have been very solid. He's running routes on the majority of snaps and dropbacks for this Eagles offense. And the thing that's extremely encouraging for me this week is we could potentially see A.J. Brown dealing with Trayvon Diggs the majority of the game. So I like Devontae Smith over 4.5 catches. But my favorite part about this bet is it's plus 135. Love the juice there on Devontae Smith over 4.5 catches.
And if you are trying to bet on pass catchers regarding the Eagles in this game this weekend, look down the list. If you don't like anything regarding A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, your next looks have got to be Dallas Goedert. And even look at Quez Watkins, because historically playing against the Cowboys, if they can take away your number 1 and 2 options, there's just going to be random games where a guy like Quez Watkins or Zach Pascal all of a sudden comes up with 3, 4, 5 catches out of nowhere simply because the Cowboys are playing phenomenally right now on defense. And it pains me to say that. Let's go back to Taylor here with her silver pick. This involves the Falcons against the 49ers, excuse me.
Yeah, I love this pick. I think it's very sharp, my silver pick, 49ers Falcons. The NFC West is San Francisco's to lose at this point, and Atlanta, surprisingly better than I expected. I'm going to take the points with the Falcons plus 5.5. This line opened as the 49ers 6-point favorites. Slight reverse line movement with 59% of the public on San Fran, but moving in favor of Atlanta. I believe that a lot of sharps are on the Falcons, so that's why I'm going with this. Atlanta is the only remaining team in the NFL that is 5-0 against the spread. They've only lost 1 game by more than 5.5, which was week 5 last week against the Bucs. I love the Falcons to cover here at plus 5.5.
That is very interesting, and especially the way Marcus Mariota has kind of stabilized the quarterback position, not necessarily doing anything breathtaking, and they lost Cordero Patterson, which is a real hit to them. He's basically their Deebo Samuel when you look at this matchup between the Falcons and 49ers. I agree with you. I do like this matchup for the Falcons. The silver pick for you, Kyle, involves Giants versus Ravens.
Yeah, I mean, when you mention the Giants, it's got to be Saquon Barkley, right? I don't know a ton of other places you're looking to bet there. Although I do have a Daniel Jones bet in the bet tracker, so maybe I'm counteracting myself there. But like Saquon across the board this week, we saw him get banged up a little bit in London. He missed a drive, but came back, scored. It might have even been the game winning, but a very crucial touchdown at the end of the game. We saw him do the nice little celebration where he jumped 8 feet into the air. That was one of the cooler celebrations so far this season, in my opinion. But I like Saquon Barkley over 72.5 rushing yards. Now, typically when you hear about this Ravens defense, you think a pretty stout defense up front, but they've actually been in the bottom 7 against the run so far this season, and they're allowing nearly 5 yards per carry. We know one thing, and that's that Saquon Barkley is the engine of this New York Giants offense, and he's been fantastic this year. He's been heavily involved, consistently involved, which is very important when betting props, in my opinion. So over 72.5 rushing yards for Saquon himself.
In regards to silver picks, I want to do one in memoriam for Chris Meaney. As I mentioned, Kyle Murray is sitting in for Chris Meaney, who is having some power outage issues in his home. So we send him the absolute best. Chris was still able to send in a couple of picks that I think are worth listening to, because this show, if there's any player in the NFL that this show loves, it's Breece Hall. Chris wanted for his silver pick New York Jets running back Breece Hall over 19.5 receiving yards at the Packers. Taylor, I'd love for you to weigh in on this, but Breece Hall continues to produce for the Jets.
I absolutely love this play. Between Chris and I, one of us always takes Breece Hall over. Whether it's Breece Hall over rushing, over on receptions, over on his receiving total, Breece Hall just looks great for the Jets. So I absolutely love that play. Just keep riding Breece Hall overs the entire season. It's working right now.
And then Mike Randall just loves Michael Pittman, the receiver for the Indianapolis Colts. So it's just, we have our favorites and we roll with them. Let's head to our gold picks. Taylor, we'll keep it with you, and we'll keep it with the Jets.
I wanted my gold pick to be in the Ravens game. I wanted to go Ravens kicker Justin Tucker over on his kicking points, but I can't find a line for that yet. So if you find it, go with that. So I'm going to switch it up instead. We're going to go Packers Jets, like we were just talking about. The Jets are really throwing me for curveballs left and right this season. I did not expect them to be 3-2 and on a 2-game winning streak going into week 6. New York fans, I feel like they must be super ecstatic right now with the Yankees in the postseason. They've got the Jets and the Giants both playing really well. Sorry about Mets fans out there. That's probably a little bit disappointing.
I'm not sorry.
Hey, I'm not either. As a Cubs fan, I'm not sad for them at all. But hey, New York, you got it going on right now. But the Jets, even though quarterback Zach Wilson is 2-0, I'm fading him against Green Bay this week. I'm going to go Wilson under 20.5 completions. Wilson's completion rating, 56%. He has yet to hit this over this season and has gone under 20.5 completions in 9 out of his last 10 starts. And heck, last week, all of New York's touchdowns were on the ground. The Packers give up the second fewest passing yards of any team in the league. With this, their team is they come into Green Bay, and I feel like they could possibly upset the Green Bay Packers, but that's very tough to do at Lambeau. I don't think it'll be through passing now, so I'm going to go Wilson under 20.5 completions as my gold pick of the week.
I like that. And thank you to Mr. Nice Guy for getting involved in the comments section, saying the Jets are winning because of good running. We were just singing the praises of Breece Hall, so we fully expect to see that happen. We'll see how it all goes down ultimately between the Jets and the Packers. Getting back to our gold picks, Kyle, this one involves Patriots at Browns.
Yeah, I do have some bad news about the pick now. I was hoping that this line would stay the same up until the show. Unfortunately, it moved. So again, another reason why guys should get involved at FTN. You can use that code below FTN TV for 20% off. All these picks go in the pick tracker or the bet tracker as soon as we make them. And sometimes they do move. So keep an eye out on that. We also have the FTN Alerts Twitter account. Highly recommend checking that out. This number is now at minus 130, but when I brought it up in the chat and when I put it in the bet tracker, it was at plus 105 for Ramondre Stevenson anytime touchdown. I think DraftKings was a little bit behind the 8 ball here in terms of their potential anytime touchdown odds. When I put this pick in the pick tracker, BetMGM had it at minus 200. And like I mentioned, DraftKings plus 105. So it was definitely a spot where maybe DraftKings thought that Damian Harris has a better chance to play. He is technically still listed questionable, but reports say that he's going to miss this week and potentially more. That doesn't give me any sort of optimism that he's going to play this week. And honestly, even if he does, I still like the spot for Ramondre Stevenson against a Cleveland team that is just giving it up whole-handedly against the run entirely all season long. They've been brutal against running backs so far this season. So Ramondre Stevenson, again, great way to utilize the FTN Bets tools. Use that prop shop to find nice values here. Like I mentioned, plus 105 on DraftKings compared to minus 200 over at BetMGM. Great value on that particular pick. So Ramondre Stevenson, anytime touchdown as my gold play this week.
And again, for those of you that are watching this on demand, just do your homework. Head to ftnbets.com, listen to the likes of Taylor and Kyle on their social media handles as the days go by, and make sure you're informed before you do all this. We're going to wrap up our gold picks with another one in memoriam for Chris Meaney. Again, he was very kind to send this one in, so I think it's worth reading. Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver Marquez Valdes-Scantling over 45.5 receiving yards in the game against the Bills, which we talked about, Taylor, a little bit earlier on. Valdes-Scantling continues to be the wide receiver outside of McCole Hardman that really is getting the attention from Patrick Mahomes. Travis Kelce at the same time, 4 receiving touchdowns against the Raiders, and has had a catch in 131 consecutive games. So there's lots of receiving threats, but Valdes-Scantling, this is interesting. I really do like this by Chris. Taylor, what do you think?
I actually love this play too, because I feel like Buffalo did a good job last year of locking up Tyreek Hill. The Chiefs don't have Tyreek Hill anymore. I feel like they're going to try to lock up Travis Kelce. So if Patrick Mahomes can't throw to him, you got to go to somebody else. So I really like this play a lot. I also love Kyle's gold pick of Ramondre Stevenson anytime touchdown. I'm also on that play. So when I saw that he had that as his gold pick, I was like, oh, I love that too. Superbook still has it at plus money also. It's at plus 115. You can get it still at plus money there.
Something to keep an eye on. George Z getting involved in the comments section. My gold pick parlay, minus 300. Kyle's wearing a fire golf hat, and Taylor hits another primetime prop. I certainly hope so for Taylor's sake, because Thursday was just rough.
I know. That was my own. I think I've only had one loss, though, so far with my FTN props. Maybe 2. That was I think that was my second loss that I had. So I was like, oh, I guess we can't get them all. But I've been pretty good with primetime so far this season. So let's hope it gets better Sunday Night Football and Monday.
I hope Monday Night Football is good for you, and I hope Sunday Night Football is bad for you, because I hope my Eagles beat the Cowboys.
Hey, I took Miles Sanders over.
I know.
Rush
I do appreciate that. If what matters is the win, and I hope the Eagles remain undefeated. I want to thank you all so much for joining us here, and I hope we've given you a lot of good information to get you guys ready for Week 6 of the NFL season. For Kyle Murray and Taylor Mathis, I'm Tom Hannifan. Thank you for joining us here. We'll be back next Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern here on YouTube. This has been the FTN Bets NFL Betting Show.